There are many things that we do extremely well in the automotive industry, but accountability is not one of them. Let me explain. So often you will hear in the automotive industry that we need to inspect what we expect. Unfortunately, inspecting what you expect is not the same as accountability. It is more policing. Now, why does that even matter? Well, it all goes back to neuroscience, a study of the brain, and understanding how we as human beings are hardwired. There's the concept of why we do what we do. And when we understand the why behind why something is important, why certain actions and behaviors are important, people will tend to embrace those actions and behaviors, and they will buy in. The problem with inspecting what you expect talks about expectations. And I, as a boss, can ask people to do things, or what is more normal is tell them to do things, because there is a difference between telling somebody and asking them. Asking suggests that I'm having a conversation and I'm seeing whether they are willing to do it or not. But more times than not in the automotive industry, we are telling people what we expect them to do. Happens all the time on the sales floor or with service advisors. We tell them what goals we want them to execute. We tell them about the road to the sale and the process steps that we expect them to take. We are telling people all the time what we expect. And when we talk about accountability in the automotive industry, we're talking about circling back and inspecting those things to see whether people are doing the things that we expected. That is not accountability, because we forgot the most important piece of accountability, and that is getting people's commitment, getting their buy-in. Because when we talk about buy-in, again, it's about the why behind it. And that all comes down to the limbic brain, which is that part of the brain that drives 3 times the emotional connection, 3 times the behaviors. However, when we tell people things, the what, and maybe even tell them how to do it, we're not achieving that all-important buy-in. And in order to get accountability, it requires other people to agree with what we're asking them to do. And from an organizational health standpoint, it all starts with vulnerability-based trust amongst the team. And especially that people trust the leader and trust each other on the leadership team, and that they will listen and have really healthy debate, because they're not afraid to have healthy conflict. And so they will debate issues. They will debate the things that we believe are necessary and important to achieve the results that we want. And by debating those things, people are able to communicate their concerns, their objections, their fears, the issues that they believe might happen as they try to execute the things that we ask them to do. But if we simply tell them to do it and they haven't bought into it yet, they might just give us lip service because they're afraid of potential consequences by dissenting. Instead, what we should do is embrace the dialogue so that we can have healthy conflict and so that people can psychologically buy in. There's this all critical psychological buy-in element that happens when we have those conversations and people commit to things. And when they commit to them, all we're doing with accountability is we're circling back around and saying, hey, do you remember the thing that we talked about? The thing that you said you would do? Hey, tell me about it. How did it go? What did you accomplish? Did you get it done? And that is our job as leaders, to circle around and hold people accountable. But don't miss the all-important critical step of having the dialogue with them and getting them to psychologically buy in to the process. And here's another thing, and you might remember I've said this before about Alan Mulally, and he did this beautifully. When people didn't want to do what he would ask them to do, It wasn't a problem. It doesn't mean that we can't be friends. It doesn't mean that we can't be amicable with each other, but it does mean that we can't work together. Because the only reason why we're together is to achieve certain results. And if people don't want to do the things that we suggest are important for the betterment of the organization, and not just doing them reluctantly, but doing them willingly because they understand why it's so important, if they really don't want to do those things, it's okay. But they do need to make a choice. And when we have those conversations, we have that dialogue, we give them the option to make a choice. And when they make the choice, they're more apt to follow through and get it done without us constantly have to chasing after people. And here's one of my biggest concerns when I hear people say a couple things. Number one, when I ask them whether certain things happen, they say, well, that's how it's supposed to work. The word supposed to should never enter into it. We should rather say, I asked somebody to do it, they said they would do it, and they didn't. Let's understand why, but more times than not, they did it because they bought into it. So leaders, this is really important. Understand the difference between accountability and policing, and focus on accountability, buy in, don't just explain your expectations. Get people to understand why it's important, to commit to it, and then do your job as a leader by following up to make sure that they did do what they said they would do. And you will achieve so much better results and have a much cohesive team and enjoy what we're doing so much more.